She needs to be cut, right now, Gloria Renfield barked, her voice sharp enough to slice the quiet. The HOA president stood in our living room, latex gloves snapped tight, a pair of surgical scissors glinting in her hand. My newborn's cry cracked the air as she leaned over the bassinet, face twisted with authority. "This isn't sanitary, Mr. Marin. That clip's been on too long." She said it like she was saving a life. She wasn't. She was trespassing. I froze halfway through the doorway, half in disbelief, half in fury. "Step back," I said, my tone low, measured, but she didn't move. "It's for the baby's safety," she added, trying to sound noble. "You should have reported a home birth to the HOA before doing something like this." That was the moment I realized she truly believed her badge gave her power over blood and family. I raised my phone, recording. "You just crossed into criminal impersonation territory, Gloria," I said, keeping the lens steady on her trembling hand. Her expression faltered, just slightly, like she wasn't used to someone who knew exactly where the law ended. She didn't know yet that she'd picked the wrong house, the wrong husband, and the wrong baby to make an example of. If you think HOA power stops at the mailbox, you need to see what happens next. Subscribe now, because what unfolded in this house changed our entire neighborhood forever. I'm Detective Elias Marin. I've spent 15 years in forensic investigation, documenting crimes the right way. Photographs, timestamps, fingerprints, digital trails. People think police work is about reaction. It's not. It's about precision. And precision is exactly what Gloria Renfield underestimated. 3 days earlier, my wife Claire had given birth to our daughter right here at home, safe, supervised by a certified midwife. No sirens, no hospital chaos, just us. The quiet hum of our porch swing creaking outside, the same one my father built before he passed. That swing had carried my childhood, my grief, and now my child. It wasn't just wood and rope. It was the last thing he left me before the cancer took him. Claire loved sitting on it during her pregnancy, saying she felt my father's steadiness in the way it swayed. That swing was peace. That peace ended the moment Gloria Renfield decided that home births violated community health ordinances. She called herself a retired nurse, but what she really was, a self-crowned enforcer with too much time and a laminated HOA badge. I'd seen her patrol before, snapping pictures of trash cans left out too long, measuring lawn height with a ruler. But this, marching into my home, threatening my newborn under the pretense of public sanitation, that was new even for Crescent Vale Estates. Claire had tried to tell me earlier that Gloria left a biohazard notice taped to our front door. I thought it was a bad joke. We laughed about it, how desperate a person had. To treat a baby as contamination. But standing there now, watching her hover over my daughter with trembling scissors, the joke was gone. She'd written our family into her rules. I stepped closer, every motion deliberate. "You've got exactly 10 seconds to put those down," I said quietly, my phone still recording. Gloria hesitated, then straightened, her fake composure cracking. "I'm trying to prevent infection," she snapped, voice shaking with a mix of guilt and defiance. That clip could cause tetanus if left on too long. I recognized the lie immediately. The clip was sterile. I'd been the one to disinfect it, the one who'd read every medical guideline before we ever planned the home birth. My training made me slow to anger, but not immune to it. Behind her, Tom Redden hovered near the doorway, his HOA badge half hidden in his hand. I caught his eyes, nervous, uncertain. Tom wasn't a bad man, just a man stuck under Gloria's control. His silence told me everything. She'd dragged him here to legitimize her insanity, and by doing nothing, he'd already become her witness. I took one step closer. "You're impersonating a health official, Gloria," I said evenly. "That's a felony in this county. Keep your gloves. They'll need your prints." Her mouth opened, but no words came. For the first time, she looked smaller, like a child caught playing doctor. My daughter's cries softened as Claire pulled her close, rocking gently. The white porch swing creaked outside, swaying in the evening wind, the same rhythm it always kept when my father watched sunsets. I realized then that this wasn't just another HOA overreach. This was invasion, of home, of safety, of lineage. Gloria thought she was cutting an umbilical cord. What she really cut was her career, her authority, and her freedom. By the time I hit save on my recording, I already knew how this would end. Not in shouting matches or fines, but in evidence, reports, and warrants. I'd built a career on chain of custody integrity, and this time, the crime scene was my own living room. The same night, after Gloria left in a storm of humiliation and empty threats, I sat on the porch swing with my phone in one hand and my daughter in the other. The swing creaked under my weight, the sound as steady as a heartbeat. I replayed the footage, her voice, her scissors, her false authority, again and again. Every frame was proof, but experience had taught me something most neighbors never learn. Proof means nothing until the right authority sees it, and Gloria still had the board, the rules, and the community's fear on her side. By morning, she'd already started damage control. A folded paper was taped to our front gate, stamped with that same fake seal and signed in her shaky handwriting. Notice of biohazard violation, public health concern. Beneath it, bold red letters. Failure to comply may result in property fine or mandatory inspection. Claire read it aloud, her voice cracking halfway through. "She's not stopping," she whispered. The paper fluttered in the breeze like a threat, thin and ordinary, but heavy with insult. Crescent Vale had always prided itself on order. Every lawn trimmed, every garbage bin identical, every child's bike parked in the same designated shed row. But that illusion of order came from fear, not pride. Gloria's notices weren't rules, they were weapons. I'd seen what she did to people who pushed back. The Hanleys 2 doors down were fined for painting their fence off-white instead of cream. Mrs. Bloomfield lost her pool privileges for having a visiting niece stay too long. The HOA didn't enforce fairness, it enforced obedience. When I walked down the street that morning, a few neighbors waved, others looked away. Rumors move faster than truth here. Someone murmured that we'd had an unlicensed birth. Another claimed the county was involved already. That was how Gloria worked. She didn't need evidence, she just needed echoes. And the echoes were starting to build. At the end of the block, old Mr. Langley, who'd lived here longer than anyone, leaned on his mailbox. "Heard she sent a report to the HOA board," he said quietly. "Said your wife endangered the baby. Claimed she saw medical waste in your trash." I almost laughed at the absurdity, but then I remembered the small white medical bag the midwife had used, perfectly legal, properly sealed. It was likely still in our bin when Gloria walked by. She didn't see waste. She saw a weapon she could twist. That night, Claire asked if we should just comply, let them inspect, and be done. She was tired, still recovering, and the last thing she wanted was another confrontation. I looked at her and saw the fatigue beneath her eyes, the kind that comes from protecting something fragile too long. "If we let her in once," I said, "she'll never stop." I wasn't wrong. The next morning, another paper arrived. This one slid under the door before sunrise. Community Health Inspection, scheduled Wednesday 10 a.m. There was no official logo, just her forged emblem and a list of inspection protocols. One of them read, "Visual verification of sanitation in nursery area." Claire's face went white as she read it. That wasn't oversight. That was invasion. I decided to walk to the HOA office that afternoon. It sat at the center of Crescent Vale, a small stucco building with glass doors and motivational posters about neighborhood harmony. Gloria wasn't there, but Tom Redden was, sitting at the front desk, tapping nervously on his laptop. He looked up, startled when he saw me. "Elias, look, about yesterday," he started. I cut him off with a calm nod. "You were there, Tom. You know what happened. You also know she's pretending to be a county health official." His jaw clenched, eyes flicking toward the closed boardroom door like he expected her to burst through any second. "I didn't agree to that," he muttered. "She said it was just a wellness check." His voice carried the weight of guilt. That moment told me everything. He was her shield, unwilling but complicit. "Tom," I said, lowering my tone, "when this blows open, you'll want to be on record for the truth." I left before he could answer, but his silence followed me out like an echo. Back home, I scanned the second notice under a forensic app I'd used for years. The seal image wasn't just fake, it was copied from a 2014 county health brochure. I recognized the pixel compression and file signature. My pulse slowed. That was my leverage. She hadn't just trespassed, She'd forged a county document. I sat back on the porch swing again, rocking gently, watching dusk settle over Crescent Vale. The porch light flickered on, reflecting off the paper pinned to our gate. It wasn't fear that kept this place quiet. It was habit. But habits break, and tomorrow I'd start breaking hers, one recorded step at a time. The next morning, I found Tom standing by the community garden behind the HOA office, his hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets. The air smelled of damp soil and fertilizer, and the sprinkler hissed behind us like it was eavesdropping. He saw me coming, but didn't move, his shoulders drawn tight, eyes fixed on a patch of wilted lavender. "I figured you'd show up," he muttered when I stopped beside him. His voice was low, strained, the tone of someone caught between conscience and consequence. I studied him for a second. His uniform polo bore the HOA crest, but his posture gave him away. One foot angled toward the exit, body turned slightly as if he was half ready to run. "You're not sleeping," I said quietly. He gave a small, humorless laugh. "She told me to delete the footage," he admitted. "Said it was private property, and she was acting under emergency community health protocols. I didn't even know what that meant." He pulled out his phone, staring at the screen without unlocking it. His thumb hovered over the power button, then retreated. "You've been on calls," I said. "Real emergencies. You know the difference between protocol and ego." His jaw tightened. "Yeah," he said, voice breaking just slightly. "But she's the president, Elias. If I go against her, I lose my position. My wife and I still live in HOA housing. She could make our lives hell." I crouched down, plucking a weed from the soil just to keep the conversation moving, giving him space to talk. "You're already living in hell," I said calmly. "Only difference is, you're pretending it's normal." That made him look at me. His eyes flicked to my hands, then back to the dirt, the unspoken truth hanging between us. He wanted out. He just didn't know how to take the first step. A pair of residents walked by, chatting about the upcoming HOA inspection day. Tom's head dipped instinctively, like a man trying to make himself smaller. When they passed, he exhaled slowly. "She's making a report to the county," he said suddenly. "Claims your home poses a sanitation hazard. She's even using my name on the form." He looked disgusted, rubbing at his neck. "I told her I wouldn't sign anything, but she said I didn't need to. She'd handle the paperwork." That explained the speed of her campaign. Gloria didn't need permission. She manufactured it. "Then you've already been dragged into fraud," I said flatly. "If you don't correct the record, you're complicit." His lips parted like he wanted to argue, but no words came. Instead, his right hand started tapping against his leg, a rapid staccato that betrayed nerves he couldn't suppress. "You don't understand," he said. "She keeps files, notes on every homeowner. She threatened to report my EMT license for confidentiality breaches if I didn't back her up." There it was, the leverage. She'd built her empire on fear and paperwork. I stood, brushing dirt from my knees. "Then let's talk leverage too," I said. "I have recordings, doorbell video, voice capture, forged seals. That's enough to get the county involved. But a corroborating witness, that's what turns an investigation into a conviction." Tom looked up sharply, hope flickering and dying in the same second. "You drag me into that?" he asked. I shook my head. "I'd drag her. You'd just stop being her shield." He hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck, then sank onto a bench. His knee bounced restlessly. "She's been saying you're dangerous," he muttered. "That your wife's unstable. She sent an email to the board claiming your daughter's health was declining due to unsafe medical conduct. She plans to present it at the next meeting." My jaw tightened. Claire had already endured enough whispers. "Good," I said. "Let her talk. Every lie she tells goes into the record I'm building." Tom's eyes darted toward me, half fear, half disbelief. "You're really going through with it?" he asked. "With her reputation?" I met his gaze. "I've dealt with worse than reputations, and I don't lose cases when I have evidence." He stared at the ground again, shoulders trembling slightly. When he finally spoke, his voice was almost a whisper. "If I help, I lose everything here. But if I don't?" His throat worked around the next word. "I lose myself." That was the crack I'd been waiting for. Not in him, but in the wall Gloria built around the board. I let the silence stretch, letting him feel his choice settling like a stone in his chest. As I walked away, I glanced back once. Tom was still on the bench, elbows on his knees, face buried in his hands. His badge hung loose around his neck, twisting in the breeze. For the first time, he looked less like a rule keeper and more like what he truly was. A man realizing the rules had turned on him, and whether he knew it yet or not, that realization had just made him my first ally. Tom didn't show up to the next HOA meeting, but his absence was louder than any protest could have been. By the time I arrived, the community hall was already full. Rows of metal folding chairs lined up like pews, the air heavy with perfume and suspicion. Gloria Renfield stood at the front beneath the HOA crest, posture crisp, voice rehearsed. Certain residents, she began, scanning the crowd until her gaze locked on me, have conducted unsanctioned medical procedures within the neighborhood, endangering public health and property values. Murmurs rippled through the room. She didn't need to name me. Everyone already knew. I stayed at the back, hands in my pockets, face unreadable. Years on the force had taught me how to blend in, even when the spotlight burned. She waved a folder in one manicured hand. "These are official notices," she declared, documenting non-compliance and evidence of medical waste found near Lot 24. Lot 24, my address. The lie landed like a spark in dry grass. I counted 6 heads turning in my direction. "The HOA has coordinated with county health representatives," she added smugly, "and an inspection has been scheduled." That line caught my attention. Coordinated with county health representatives? There was no record of that in any public listing. She was doubling down, manufacturing jurisdiction. I let her finish her performance, then stepped forward slowly, the kind of deliberate pace that unsettles a liar. "Mind if I see those documents?" I asked evenly. A few neighbors gasped at the interruption. Gloria smiled, lips tight. "I'm sorry, Mr. Marin. These are confidential board materials." "Confidential," I repeated. Interesting word for forged. Her face stiffened. "Excuse me?" "The seal on your notice, copied from a 2014 county brochure. Pixel distortion, low-resolution compression, 2 layers of cloned text. It's not county issued." I could feel the air shift. Someone whispered, "He's a detective." That was enough to make her blink. "I'll be submitting my own report," I said, "to the county, since you like coordination so much." She tried to recover, but her voice faltered. "This meeting is adjourned." She grabbed her folder and turned away. The crowd began buzzing, a dozen conversations breaking out at once. As she brushed past, I caught the faint scent of antiseptic clinging to her gloves. She'd come ready to play nurse again. Outside, the evening air hit cool and sharp. Streetlights cast long shadows over the manicured lawns. Every home identical under regulation. Tom's car wasn't in the lot. I figured he was avoiding the fallout. I couldn't blame him. What happened inside wasn't a confrontation. It was exposure, and exposure had consequences. Back home, Claire met me at the door. "They delivered another letter," she said, holding it out. The envelope was thick, embossed with the HOA's seal, the same one I'd already proven false. Inside was a single page. "Failure to comply with upcoming inspection will result in HOA legal escalation and community citation." At the bottom, a new signature, Tom Reddens. I stared at it for a long time. "She used his name again," I said quietly. Claire frowned. "Isn't that forgery?" "Yes," I said, "and it's also intimidation." I walked into my home office, cleared the desk, and laid the letter beside the previous ones. The pattern was obvious: fake seals, identical formatting, same ink bleed from a cheap desktop printer, each one a thread. Together, a net. I photographed everything with my DSLR, metadata auto-logging timestamps. Evidence didn't lie, and I was building a case line by line. I emailed a trusted contact at the Maricopa County Health Department, a compliance officer named Paula Janes. We'd crossed paths during a counterfeit pharmaceutical case years ago. My message was brief: need confirmation of alleged coordination with Crescent Vale HOA, possible impersonation of health authority. Attaching samples. I hit send. 10 minutes later, her reply came through. "No such coordination authorized. Forwarding to County Council for review. Sit tight." That was the moment the tide shifted. Gloria wanted control through fear. I preferred leverage through process. One worked faster, but mine worked permanently. Later that night, as I sat on the porch swing, Claire joined me with the baby asleep against her chest. "Do you think she'll stop?" she asked. The wind carried the faint scent of cut grass, the kind of peace that pretends the world isn't rotting under it. "No," I said, watching the HOA building's distant lights still on. "She's going to double down. People like her always do." Across the street, Gloria's silhouette appeared briefly in her window, pacing, probably writing her next notice. I took a slow breath, my hand brushing the swing's wooden arm. "But this time," I murmured, "she's leaving fingerprints on every lie." By morning, I'd have an official record from the county verifying she wasn't sanctioned. That was the first link between her arrogance and a felony. She thought she ran Crescent Vale. She was about to learn what happens when you fake authority in front of someone who lives by the law. The county's email came through just before dawn. Paula Janes's message was brief but definitive. There was no active or historical coordination with Crescent Vale Estates or its HOA. "If they've used our seal or referenced our department, send originals," she wrote. "We'll open an impersonation inquiry." I stared at the screen, half smiling. That single sentence shifted everything. It meant the state itself would now pull the thread Gloria had spun around us. By mid-morning, I had everything boxed and labeled, each notice sealed in a plastic sleeve, timestamps recorded, photographs cross-referenced. It wasn't just paperwork, it was ammunition. Claire stood by the doorway, rocking our daughter, eyes tired but determined. "You're really going to the HOA office?" she asked. "Not to talk," I said. "To deliver." The office sat quiet when I arrived, sunlight slanting through the blinds across the glass doors. Inside, Gloria was at her desk, typing something furiously. She didn't look up when I entered. "You can't just barge in," she said, tone brittle. I placed the folder on her desk. "You might want to read this before you keep typing." She froze mid-keystroke. "What is it?" "Confirmation," I said. "From Maricopa County. They've never heard of you." Her head jerked up, the composure she always wore cracking like thin glass. "Excuse me? You forged a county seal, Gloria. You impersonated a public health official. That's a felony. The county is investigating." I let the silence stretch. She opened her mouth, closed it, then fumbled for authority she no longer had. "You can't threaten me with your cop talk. This is a community matter." "No," I said, leaning forward. "This is criminal impersonation, and you signed it with my neighbor's name." Her chair squeaked as she leaned back, arms folding. For the first time, I saw fear flicker behind her arrogance. "You're bluffing," she said weakly. "You wouldn't risk going public. It'd embarrass your wife." I smiled slightly. "You're confusing embarrassment with evidence. I don't do silence. I do reports." I turned to leave, but she called after me. "You'll regret this. I know people in the county too." I didn't answer. The kind of people she knew were the kind that vanished when the first subpoena hit. Outside, I pulled out my phone and dialed Paula's number. "I'm dropping off the physical documents," I said. She met me that afternoon in the health department lobby, a small square building that smelled faintly of bleach and paper. Paula was just as I remembered, sharp-eyed, practical, zero patience for nonsense. She flipped through the pages, expression hardening with every forgery she saw. "She really stamped her name on these?" "And signed one using her secretary's," I said. "He didn't authorize it." Paula nodded slowly. "Good. That makes it easier. We'll refer it to the county attorney's office." The words landed like music. I wasn't naive enough to think it was over, but now the gears of something bigger had started turning, something Gloria couldn't micromanage or threaten. When I got back to Crescent Vale, the tension was palpable. People lingered on porches, whispering. Rumors had spread faster than the truth again, but this time, I was the one controlling the facts. I stopped by the mail kiosk and found a new community update pinned to the corkboard. It was Gloria's handwriting again, defensive and desperate. False accusations have been made against HOA leadership. We remain committed to maintaining standards of health and order. I almost laughed. The phrasing was textbook panic. Behind the bold language was fear. A woman realizing her crown was slipping. That night, I sat on the porch swing again, laptop balanced on my knees, watching the streetlights hum. I organized digital backups, cloud-stored the files, and synced the audio from the HOA meeting with the photos. Every keystroke tightened the net. Claire came out, laying a hand on my shoulder. "She won't stop," she said softly. "People like her don't stop until they're stopped." "That's why I don't intend to stop either," I replied. Across the street, Gloria's porch light flicked on, then off again. Movement in her window, a figure pacing, probably drafting her next round of letters. I let out a slow breath. "Let her," I said quietly. "Every word she writes now belongs to evidence." Inside, the baby stirred. Claire went to comfort her, leaving me under the faint buzz of the porch lamp. I watched the screen's glow reflect off the swing's white paint, the same wood my father had sanded smooth decades ago. He always said order was earned, not enforced. That memory anchored me. By the time the clock hit midnight, my inbox pinged again. A new message from Paula. Formal case opened, investigator assigned. Expect contact within 48 hours. I leaned back, exhaling. The victory wasn't here yet, but it was on its way. And this time, it would come wearing a badge she couldn't question. By the next afternoon, the investigation email had become more than words. It had a name attached. Investigator Neil Drummond, Maricopa County Compliance Division. He'd scheduled a preliminary call for that evening. I read the message twice, then printed it for my records. I'd built my case carefully, but this was the moment it turned official. Evidence was one thing. Government paper made it law. The HOA office windows were dark that morning, blinds drawn tight. Gloria's car was parked diagonally across two spaces like she owned the asphalt. A few residents lingered nearby, talking in low tones. I caught snippets. County inquiry, fake health seal, police detective. The story was spreading, and this time not under her control. I could almost feel the shift, subtle but real. The fear that used to belong to the residents was now hers. At 3 p.m., my phone rang. "Detective Marin?" The voice on the other end was clipped, efficient. "This is Investigator Drummond with Maricopa County. I've reviewed the materials forwarded by Ms. Janes. You understand the seriousness of impersonation of a public official?" "I do," I said. "You'll have more when you arrive." She forged at least 3 inspection notices and signed a 4th under someone else's name. "Her secretary," he confirmed, tone neutral. "Yes. We verified he's a licensed EMT. He's been subpoenaed for questioning." That told me Tom had finally been pulled into the official channel. Relief and worry hit me at once. He'd wanted to do the right thing, but now there was no turning back. "We'll need physical access to the originals," Drummond said. "Our team will visit the HOA office tomorrow morning. I'd appreciate it if you were available for a statement." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "I'll be there." After the call, I drove to the edge of Crescent Vale, the part of the community most residents ignored, where the manicured lawns gave way to the dry wash that marked the property line. From there, you could see the whole neighborhood. Identical roofs, identical fences, all built on the illusion of control. I'd once admired that symmetry. Now, it looked like a cage Gloria had welded herself into. I parked by the drainage wall, needing distance from the houses. My thoughts turned to Tom. If he'd been subpoenaed, that meant the county was already preparing affidavits. He'd either testify willingly or be dragged into the process. I hoped it would be the former. He didn't deserve to go down with her. A buzz from my phone interrupted the thought. A text from an unknown number. "She knows, be careful." No name. But I didn't need one. The phrasing, the clipped punctuation, it sounded like Tom. I pocketed the phone and headed home. When I reached the gate, Claire was waiting on the porch swing with the baby in her arms. "Someone was here," she said. "They left this." A small envelope lay beside her on the swing. Inside was a photo, blurry, black and white, printed from a cheap copier. It showed me standing at the county health building, handing over documents to Paula. No message, just that image. I turned it over. On the back, written in Gloria's sharp handwriting, "Watch your step. The HOA protects its own." For a moment, anger flared hotter than logic. Then my training kicked in. Threats weren't intimidation. They were confessions of fear. I photographed the letter and sealed it in a bag. Evidence again. Every time she struck, she gave me another weapon. That night, after dinner, I sat at the kitchen table uploading files to a secure county drive. Claire stood beside me, silent but steady. "Are you sure this will end?" she asked. "It won't end cleanly," I said, "but it'll end lawfully. She nodded, brushing the baby's hair with her fingers. That's enough. At 8:00 p.m., Drummond emailed again. County visit confirmed for 9:00 a.m. tomorrow. Attached was a brief request. Ensure access to HOA office documents and witnesses. Bring all originals, I replied within a minute. All prepared. I'll provide my statement and chain of custody report. Outside, Crescent Vale was unnervingly still. No porch lights on, no kids. Bikes left out. Just the eerie quiet of a neighborhood waiting for someone to lose. Gloria had built her authority on fear. Now she was about to face something she couldn't manipulate. A process with teeth. A paper trail that couldn't be shredded. I stood by the porch swing for a while, hand on the wood grain my father had polished years ago. Tomorrow, investigators would walk the same sidewalks she'd used to patrol with a clipboard, and when they knocked on her door, they wouldn't be asking questions. They'd be reading her rights. The investigators arrived right on time. 2 county vehicles pulling into Crescent Vale's community lot, their white decals catching the morning light. Residents peeked from windows, curtains fluttering like nervous eyelids. For the first time, Gloria wasn't the one commanding attention. She was the spectacle. I stood by the HOA office entrance, my evidence folder tucked under my arm. Drummond stepped out first, tall, composed, the kind of man who didn't waste words. Detective Marin, he greeted, shaking my hand. We'll keep this by the book. That's the only way I work, I said. The office doors were locked. Drummond motioned to his partner, who gave them a quick knock. After a tense pause, Gloria appeared, her expression forced into something between surprise and outrage. You can't just show up unannounced, she snapped. This is private property. Drummond produced his badge. Ma'am, we're here under county authorization to retrieve materials relevant to a forgery investigation. Her mouth opened, then shut. The room behind her was dim. I could see folders stacked haphazardly on the conference table, a printer still warm from use. They walked past her without waiting for permission. I stayed in the doorway, recording discreetly on my phone. Gloria hovered near the desk, arms crossed, mask of authority slipping. You have no right to involve outsiders in HOA business, she said. Drummond looked up briefly. Impersonating a public official isn't HOA business. That shut her down. 15 minutes in, another car pulled up, Tom Redden's. He stepped out slowly, one hand clutching a folder, the other tightening his jacket collar against the morning breeze. He looked like a man walking into confession. Mr. Redden, Drummond called, thank you for coming. Tom nodded, eyes flicking nervously toward Gloria. You're early, she hissed. You were supposed to stay quiet until we handled this internally. He didn't answer. Instead, he walked past her, setting his folder down beside mine. His hands trembled slightly as he unzipped it. I brought copies of the internal memos, he said, voice low but steady. Emails, timestamps, and the notice templates she had me print. Gloria's head snapped toward him. Tom, she said, her voice cracking, you're mistaken. Those were drafts. You know that. He didn't look at her. You told me to delete the originals, he said. You said they could be misinterpreted. The air in the room shifted, like everyone sensed something irreversible had just happened. Drummond's partner, a younger investigator, stepped forward. We'll take those. Tom handed over the folder, his fingers white at the knuckles. I could see the internal war still happening in his eyes. The loyalty, the guilt, the exhaustion. She said if I didn't back her, she'd ruin me, he whispered. Claim I falsified medical compliance records. I couldn't risk losing my license. Drummond nodded. You did the right thing now. Tom gave a small, hollow laugh. Feels late for that. He sank into one of the chairs, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. Gloria's face had gone pale. He's lying, she said, voice rising. He's covering his own negligence. Then you won't mind if we review your system logs, Drummond replied calmly. She froze again. I stayed quiet, letting the process unfold. Watching Gloria cornered by truth was almost anticlimactic, like watching a storm lose its thunder. Tom rubbed his hands together, the tremor refusing to fade. There's something else, he said finally. She sent that fake report to the county under a different email, not the HOA address, her husband's. It routes through a private domain. I saw her do it. Drummond turned to his partner. Traceable? Completely, the investigator said. That broke the last piece of Gloria's composure. "You don't understand," she sputtered. "I was protecting the neighborhood. That family brought contamination." "Enough," Drummond cut her off. "You've impersonated a health authority, forged signatures, and coerced a subordinate. You're done talking." Tom's eyes met mine across the room. The guilt that had haunted him for weeks was still there, but beneath it, something else. Relief. He'd finally stepped out from under her shadow. I gave a small nod, silent acknowledgement of the courage it took. Drummond collected the last of the files and gestured toward the door. "We'll be in touch, Detective," he said. "Expect follow-up for testimony." As they left, Gloria remained frozen by her desk, eyes glassy, mouth slightly open, as if she couldn't comprehend how her dominion had crumbled in a single morning. Outside, Tom lingered near his car. "You think they'll actually charge her?" he asked quietly. "They will," I said. "You just gave them what they needed." He looked down at his hands, flexing them once, as though testing if they still belonged to him. "Guess I finally did my job," he said. "You did," I replied. "You just changed this place more than any policy ever could." As I watched him drive off, the sun caught on the porch swing across the street, the one Gloria had once mocked for being unsightly. It glowed white in the light, steady and untouched. For the first time since all this began, Crescent Vale didn't feel suffocating. It felt like the walls were cracking and light was finally getting in. The next 48 hours moved like clockwork. Once the county sealed Gloria's office, word spread through Crescent Vale faster than gossip ever had. Residents who once whispered against us now lingered near our fence line, offering awkward smiles, sudden friendliness, even baked goods. Fear had shifted direction. It no longer pointed at the homeowners. It pointed at her. I spent that morning at the precinct annex downtown, a neutral space the county provided for sworn statements. The room was sterile, gray walls, one desk, no distractions. Drummond sat across from me, recorder blinking red. "State your name and occupation for the record." I did. Then he asked for a chronological account. I laid it out step by step. The first forged notice, the porch confrontation, Tom's confession, the fake seal traced to her printer. Every detail connected, clean as circuitry. When it was over, Drummond leaned back. "You've documented better than most officers do on active duty," he said. "Old habits," I replied. "You'll make the case easy for prosecution," he said, closing his folder. "The county attorney's drafting charges for impersonation, fraud, and harassment. If she tries to intimidate anyone else, tell them to forward it to us directly." As I stepped outside, the Arizona sun hit like a hammer. For a moment, I just stood there, breathing in heat and relief. But this wasn't over. Gloria might have been cornered, but she'd built her power through fear, and fear has a way of surviving longer than its master. That evening, I met Tom again, this time at a diner just beyond Crescent Vale's gated entrance, neutral ground. He looked different now, lighter somehow. No HOA badge, no nervous twitch in his shoulders. Just a man trying to reclaim normal. "County called me," he said as I slid into the booth. "Said I'll testify if it goes to court." "You'll do fine," I told him. "Just tell the truth." He gave a shaky laugh. I forgot what that sounds like in her world. He sipped his coffee, eyes flicking toward the window, like he was still expecting her to walk in. "She's trying to rally the board," he said. "The vice president, Mason Brooks, he's loyal to her. She's convincing him this whole thing is political." "That's fine," I said. "Let her talk. The more she defends herself, the deeper she digs." Tom hesitated, then lowered his voice. "There's one more thing you should know. She has a backup drive in her husband's safe. Emails, board communications, everything she didn't want on HOA servers. She bragged about it, said she kept it in case anyone betrayed her." My attention sharpened. "You've seen it? Once. A silver flash drive with a county logo sticker on it. She keeps it labeled inspection records, but it's her insurance policy." That was the missing link. The fake health seal didn't come from nowhere. It came from that drive. "You can't get it," Tom said quickly, reading my expression. "It's off-site. Her husband's law firm in town. Locked storage." "I don't need to," I said. "I just needed to know it exists. The county can subpoena it." He nodded, eyes tired but relieved. "Then this is really it?" "Almost," I said. "The evidence is airtight, but public exposure seals it. Once the community knows what she's done, there's no way back." Tom stared at his cup, then looked up. "You're not doing this just for you, are you?" "No," I said. "For everyone who thought they couldn't fight back." When I got home, the streetlights had come on. The HOA notice board was empty, her last flyers torn down. Claire was sitting on the porch swing, rocking the baby as cicadas hummed in the trees. "How did it go?" she asked. "Drummond's filing charges," I said, and Tom gave me the last piece. She smiled faintly, exhaustion and relief mixing in her eyes. "Then we're almost done." I looked at the neighborhood around us. Perfect lawns, perfect mailboxes, perfect silence. For years, people here had accepted control because it was disguised as community. But control was breaking. I could feel it in the air, the same way a storm feels before the first drop falls. That night, I uploaded everything, my report, Tom's affidavit, the audio of Gloria's confession from the meeting, to a public record portal, not social media, just a place journalists could access once the case became official. If she wanted control, she'd get the spotlight too. When I shut down the computer, the baby let out a small cry from the other room. Claire went to her, humming softly. I stayed on the porch, the swing swaying beneath me. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled over the horizon. The sound made me smile. It wasn't danger anymore. It was change coming closer, steady and unstoppable, with a name, a badge, and a warrant waiting at dawn. The storm arrived at dawn. Thunder rattled across the valley as rain swept through Crescent Vale, washing dust from roofs that hadn't seen weather in months. By the time I stepped outside, the sidewalks shimmered silver, the air thick with petrichor. It felt symbolic, like the neighborhood was being scrubbed clean before Judgment Day. At 8:45 a.m., 2 unmarked county sedans rolled past the gatehouse. The guard didn't even bother to stop them. He just stepped aside, rain slicking his uniform. From my porch, I could see neighbors gathering under awnings, clutching umbrellas and cell phones. Word had spread overnight that the county was back, this time not for interviews, but for seizures. Drummond had texted me an hour earlier. "Executing warrant, stay nearby for statement." I was ready. My camera gear was packed, lenses, clean, batteries charged. Old instincts. When a case hits this point, documentation isn't optional, it's survival. I made my way toward the HOA building, rain pelting the asphalt. The white stucco walls looked smaller now, weaker. The banners about community integrity hanging limp in the downpour. 2 investigators stood by the entrance while Drummond and a deputy disappeared inside. A cluster of residents had formed at the opposite curb, their umbrellas forming a makeshift barricade. I recognized Mrs. Bloomfield clutching a thermos, whispering to the Hanleys. Fear was turning to fascination. When Drummond reappeared 10 minutes later, he carried a clear plastic evidence case. Inside, a silver flash drive with the county seal sticker exactly where Tom had said it would be. My chest tightened, not from surprise, but from satisfaction. He held it up briefly before slipping it into a lockbox. "Found it in a drawer marked HOA Legal," he said. "Your witness was telling the truth." "He usually does," I said. Behind him, Gloria stood on the porch, drenched, hair plastered to her temples. Her voice cracked as she shouted at the investigators. "You can't take that! That's private property!" Drummond didn't even look at her. "County domain once you use official insignia." She tried to snatch the case, but the deputy blocked her. The motion was almost pathetic. A queen stripped of her throne, still clinging to a crown made of paper. Then Mason Brooks, the vice president, emerged from the crowd. "Gloria, stop," he called out. "You're making it worse." She whirled on him. "You think you're safe? They'll come for you next. You signed every policy I wrote." Mason's voice shook. "You told us it was all legal." She laughed, bitter and loud. "You didn't ask enough questions." That single sentence silenced the entire street. Drummond turned to me. "We'll take her statement at the precinct. You'll need to sign as the reporting party." I nodded. Gloria looked at me then. Really looked. Her eyes were wild, but beneath the anger, I saw confusion. "You did this," she said, voice trembling. "You ruined everything I built." I stepped closer, the rain dripping from my jacket's brim. "You did that the moment you decided power was more important than people." Her expression twisted, but she said nothing more. The deputy guided her toward the vehicle, hand gently but firmly on her arm. Mason followed silently, head bowed. As the cars pulled away, a murmur rose from the neighbors. Not cheers, not laughter, just a collective exhale, the sound of relief breaking through years of control. When the street cleared, Drummond handed me a form inside a plastic sleeve. You'll get an official notice when charges are filed. She'll likely be arraigned this week. He paused, then added quietly, most communities don't get this far. People give up before they win. I looked back toward my house, the porch swing barely visible through the mist. We didn't have the luxury of giving up. As he left, I walked back through puddles that reflected the pale morning light. The storm was easing, but the air still buzzed with electricity. Claire waited by the door, holding the baby close, her face unreadable until she saw my nod. It's over, I said softly. They found it. She smiled, tears mixing with the rain. Good, she whispered. Then maybe she'll stop haunting this place. I looked past her to the swing, the wood damp but solid, still creaking gently in the wind. She will, I said, but not because she wants to, because the law finally said she has to. Later, when the sky cleared, I noticed something subtle but powerful. The HOA sign near the entrance had been taken down. No one claimed credit. Maybe it was the county, maybe a neighbor tired of rules masquerading as safety. Either way, it stood empty now, a blank board waiting for a new beginning. And for the first time since this war began, Crescent Vale didn't feel like a prison. It felt like proof that order doesn't come from control, it comes from accountability. By the next morning, the storm had passed, but the neighborhood didn't return to normal. Crescent Vale felt hollow, like the sound had been drained from it. The HOA building was cordoned off with yellow tape, its windows dark. The once bustling sidewalks, where Gloria's clipboard used to flash like a badge, were empty. A notice from the county attorney's office now hung at the gate, pending review, allegations of forgery, coercion, and impersonation under Statute 13-2002. Claire stood beside me as I read it. They're not wasting time, she said softly. They can't afford to, I replied. Once a case like this hits public record, they move fast. Our daughter slept against her shoulder, tiny breaths muffled by the blanket. For the first time, the air felt safe enough to breathe deeply. Still, I knew we weren't done. Justice doesn't end with a warrant. It ends when the truth becomes impossible to twist. That afternoon, I met with Drummond and a county attorney named Vega at the Civic Center downtown. The fluorescent lights made everything too bright, the walls lined with framed photos of past prosecutors. Vega gestured for me to sit. Detective Marin, she began, you've been instrumental in documenting this case. The evidence is clean, verified, and admissible. The problem now is the optics. She flipped through the file. Gloria Renfield still has allies on the board. Some residents are petitioning to reinstate her pending trial. I almost laughed, but it came out flat. After everything, some people fear losing structure more than living under abuse, Vega said. We've seen it before. If this community wants lasting change, you'll need to help us make the facts public, transparent, accessible. I knew what that meant. Not courtroom theatrics, public accountability. She needed someone to make sure Crescent Vale couldn't hide behind ignorance again. What do you need me to do? I asked. Tomorrow, we'll host a community review meeting, she said. County representatives, media observers, and residents. We'll present the verified evidence, the seals, the forged signatures, the misuse of authority. We'd like you to speak first. Public confrontation, exactly where this needed to go. I'll be there, I said. That night, Claire helped me rehearse my statement while the baby slept in her bassinet. Every sentence had to strike balance, professional enough to hold authority, personal enough to pierce denial. You're not just a detective, Claire said. You're a father defending your home. Don't forget that. Her words grounded me. This wasn't about career procedure. It was about dignity, the kind my father's porch swing symbolized, the kind Gloria had tried to strip away. When morning came, I dressed like I was going to court, pressed shirt, dark jacket, badge clipped to my belt, but out of sight. The community center was full before I arrived. Reporters lined one wall, residents filled every chair. The board members sat stiff in a row, their faces pale under the harsh lighting. At the far end, Gloria sat between her lawyer and a sheriff's deputy. Her expression was unreadable, but her hands trembled slightly, fingers clasped too tight. Drummond opened the session with procedural remarks, then nodded to me. The microphone squeaked as I adjusted it. I started simply, "My name is Detective Elias Marin. I'm a resident of Crescent Vale Estates." A ripple moved through the crowd. Titles meant less here than truth. 3 weeks ago, the president of this HOA entered my home without permission, impersonated a health official, and attempted to interfere with my newborn's postnatal care. I documented everything: audio, video, and forged correspondence. Every claim you'll hear today is verified by the Maricopa County Compliance Division. As I spoke, the projector displayed the notices she'd printed, the fake seals, the mismatched signatures. Murmurs rose, followed by sharp intakes of breath. "This isn't about a single violation," I continued. "It's about what happens when authority goes unchecked in a place built on fear. You all lived it. You just stopped believing it could be challenged." When I finished, the room was silent except for the whir of the ceiling fan. Vega stepped up next, reading the county's findings: impersonation, forgery, and coercion of an employee. Every word landed like a verdict. Gloria's lawyer tried to object, something about selective enforcement, but Vega silenced him with a line I'll never forget. Selective enforcement doesn't exist when the enforcer fabricates the rules. Outside, cameras flashed as we stepped into the sunlight. Reporters shouted questions, but I ignored them. Across the lot, I spotted Tom leaning against his car, watching from a distance. He gave me a nod, small, grateful, certain. By the time I reached home, neighbors were already removing the last HOA banners. The metal poles clanged faintly as they hit the pavement. Claire was on the porch swing, the baby awake now, smiling up at her. "How'd it go?" she asked. I looked around at the quiet street, at the people who no longer looked afraid. "It's going," I said. "Finally, it's going the right way." The next evening, the county scheduled a follow-up town forum in the community park, the same open field where Gloria used to host HOA barbecues and hand out citations like party favors. Temporary floodlights lit the grass, and rows of folding chairs faced a small platform draped with a county seal banner. Every house had its porch light on, illuminating the crowd that gathered. The turnout was larger than I expected. People who'd once avoided eye contact now stood shoulder to shoulder, waiting. It wasn't fear anymore. It was reckoning. Drummond stood beside the stage, clipboard in hand, while Vega reviewed her notes. Reporters arranged cameras near the back fence. Claire held the baby a few rows from the front, her face calm but proud. The wind had picked up, rustling the trees, scattering the last of the paper notices that had clung to the bulletin board. The HOA emblem still hung there, half peeled and flapping like a defeated flag. At exactly 7 o'clock, Vega stepped up to the microphone. "Thank you all for coming," she said, her voice carrying over the hum of the generators. "This meeting is being recorded as part of the county's public transparency review. Tonight, you'll hear the verified findings from the investigation into Crescent Vale's Homeowners Association." She gestured to Drummond, "and you'll have the chance to speak, on record." Gloria sat near the front, her posture rigid, flanked by her attorney and 2 remaining board members. Her expression was the same brittle confidence she'd worn for weeks, but her eyes betrayed exhaustion. When Vega began reading the official statement, the rhythm of authority replaced rumor. Dates, document references, statutes violated. The words impersonation, forgery, and coercion hung in the air like thunder rolling slow and final. Then Vega called me forward again. The crowd parted as I walked to the platform. I didn't bring notes this time. I didn't need them. "You all know me," I began. "I've lived here for 6 years. I've helped some of you fix fences after storms. I've pulled trash cans in for folks who forgot garbage day. I thought we lived in a community built on respect." I paused, scanning the faces. Neighbors who had once feared the next citation, the next fine. But what we had wasn't respect. It was fear of one person who decided rules mattered more than people. A murmur moved. Through the crowd, someone shouted, "Say it!" I nodded toward Gloria. She walked into my home. She tried to interfere with my newborn's medical care. She forged county documents to justify it, and she lied to every one of you about her authority to do so. Gloria stood abruptly, her voice sharp. "You're twisting everything. I was protecting this neighborhood." The microphone caught her words perfectly. Vega didn't stop me. She just watched. "Protecting?" I said. "You forged a health department seal, Gloria. You used an EMT's name to make it look real. You threatened people to stay silent. The crowd erupted in overlapping voices. The Hanleys shouted from the back about their fence fines. Mrs. Bloomfield stepped forward, trembling but steady. You told me I'd lose my house if I hosted my niece again, she said, tears streaking her face. Was that protection too? Gloria's face paled under the lights. Those were community standards, she snapped. Without order, we'd have chaos. I let the noise settle before speaking again. Order isn't control, I said quietly. Order is trust, and you broke it. I turned toward the audience. The county isn't just here to punish her. They're here to help rebuild what we let her destroy. Drummond stepped up then, holding a printed document. Under county supervision, Crescent Vale's HOA will be dissolved effective immediately. A new residence council will be formed through open election. All prior fines and citations issued by Ms. Renfield are void. Gasps, then applause. Hesitant at first, then growing into something that felt like release. Gloria's lawyer tried to quiet her, but she shook him off, shouting over the noise. You think this will last? You'll see what happens without rules, she yelled, her voice cracking under the weight of her own echo. Tom walked forward from the crowd then, calm and composed. He faced her, his voice low but firm. We'll manage just fine, he said, without threats. The audience fell silent for a heartbeat, then broke into applause again, louder, clearer, freer. The moment hung there, the sound of a neighborhood reclaiming itself. I glanced toward the back, where Claire rocked our daughter under the glow of a street lamp. The baby's small fingers gripped the edge of her blanket, completely untouched by the chaos around her. For the first time since it began, the noise didn't feel hostile. It felt alive. Vega closed the session formally, announcing the formation of a temporary resident committee. As the crowd dispersed, people stopped to shake my hand, thank Tom, and offer quiet apologies for their silence before. Gloria remained seated long after everyone left, staring at the wet grass like she was waiting for a rulebook that no longer existed. When the lights dimmed and the cameras packed up, I stood beneath the old oak at the edge of the park, rain starting to fall. Again, soft, cleansing. The wind carried faint laughter from the houses nearby. It wasn't fear anymore. It was the sound of life returning to normal, one unbroken porch light at a time. By the next sunrise, Crescent Vale didn't look the same. The banners were gone, the HOA office sealed shut, and the gates that once stood as symbols of control now swung open freely. Even the air smelled different, cleaner, lighter. For the first time in years, no one woke up wondering what violation notice might appear on their door. The neighborhood that had lived under Gloria Renfield's thumb was starting to remember what it meant to belong to itself. I walked the block before breakfast, passing yards where people were repainting fences or hanging porch plants that had once been non-compliant. Someone had chalked a message on the sidewalk near the park. Freedom looks good on Crescent Vale. The words made me stop for a moment just to take it in. Freedom wasn't loud here. It was quiet, like the absence of tension. When I reached the community green, a small crowd had gathered around a makeshift notice board. It wasn't HOA property anymore. It was just a shared space. Tom was there, posting a printed flyer, resident council elections, open nomination. His hands didn't shake this time. He noticed me and smiled. Guess we get to start from scratch, he said. No presidents, no fines, just people. I nodded. That's how communities should run, by trust, not terror. He laughed softly. You know, I used to think rules kept us safe. They can, I said, when they're written to protect, not control. He looked down at the ballot forms, then back up. You running? Not a chance, I said. You'll do fine. As I turned to leave, he called after me. Hey, Elias, thanks for not giving up on me. I stopped, met his eyes, and nodded once. You gave yourself a second chance, Tom. That's all any of us needed. Back home, Claire was on the porch swing, the baby bundled in her arms, sunlight spilling across the steps. She looked up as I walked through the gate. You were out early, she said, making sure the world didn't collapse without HOA supervision. I smiled, still standing, stronger than before. She laughed, the sound soft and familiar. Feels strange not seeing those ridiculous flyers everywhere. I sat beside her, the swing creaking gently beneath us. It's over, I said, though part of me still didn't believe it. The county finished the paperwork this morning. Crescent Vale's HOA is officially dissolved. Her eyes softened. So what now? I looked at our daughter, her tiny hands reaching for the sunlight between the swing slats. Now, we build something worth protecting. The baby giggled, the sound catching in the breeze like a promise. For the first time, I let myself relax. The tension that had wound through every moment since Gloria's intrusion finally loosened. I closed my eyes and let the warmth sink in. Later that afternoon, Drummond stopped by. His government sedan looked out of place among the pastel houses and open lawns. He stepped out, holding a small envelope. "County wanted you to have this," he said. Inside was a letter of recognition, acknowledgement of my cooperation and evidence integrity. "You set a precedent, Detective," he said. "Most HOA cases never reach prosecution, let alone reform." "I didn't do it for precedent," I replied. "I did it because she crossed the line into my home." Drummond nodded, expression grave. "Still, it matters. You proved documentation beats intimidation every time." He tipped his head toward the porch swing. "And that looks like a good reminder of why it was worth it." When he left, Claire came outside again, her hair loose, barefoot on the steps. "He thanked you?" she asked. "He did." "Good," she said, "because none of them really understand what that took." I looked at her, the swing behind us glowing white in the setting sun. "They don't need to," I said. "We do." That evening, neighbors gathered around the park for what someone jokingly called the Freedom Cookout. No rules, no forms, just people sharing food and stories. Children played near the sprinklers, laughter echoing through streets that used to whisper. Claire and I walked there at dusk, our daughter asleep against her chest. No one spoke of Gloria. Her house sat dark, for sale sign leaning in the yard. The world had moved on, and justice had done its quiet work. When we returned home, I sat on the porch swing one last time that night. The wood creaked, the same sound my father once called the rhythm of peace. The air was calm, the sky clear. I thought about what we'd lost and what we'd reclaimed. It wasn't just safety, it was trust, the invisible thing that makes neighbors more than strangers with matching lawns. I looked at the camera still sitting by the doorway, its memory card full of the story no one could erase now. Then, I looked at the lights across Crescent Vale, each porch glowing steady, each one proof that control had failed and community had survived. If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now, share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from.